What is going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. So this is a separate video that I just wanted to make to address all the confusion around the controversies and the drama that is surrounding the new MacBook Air M2. Note that this is not my full review. I've already done an extensive review on the new MacBook Air M2 and also the unboxing video. So I'll be linking that in this video. So please do check that out as well to get an entire idea of how this device actually performs in day-to-day usage. And in that review as well, I have addressed all these controversies that are surrounding this new MacBook Air M2. But the thing is that that video is pretty long, and I just wanted to make this a separate one because if you're just concerned and confused with all the negativity that is there on Tech YouTube with this new device, then this is like one stop video and a comprehensive video basically just to address the controversies and the drama. So without wasting your time, spoiler alert that you really don't need to worry about the controversies and the drama surrounding this device. It basically depends on your use case, and I'm not talking about just light use case. Even if you have like semi-pro usage, you can still ignore all this controversy part that is surrounding this device. But let's have a detailed discussion about it and let's see why. So the first thing is, of course, about the single NAND chip that Apple has put in this device compared to the dual NAND chip that was there in the older M1 MacBook Air. Now I get it, this is not a fair thing to do, and whatever reason Apple has for that, it actually is not affecting day-to-day usage. And let me tell you why. If you even look at other reviews like Greg's Gadget reviews and also Max Tech videos, in that also they have done huge file transfers like 30 gigs that has completed only in 1 minute, and even 100 gigs file transfer that is completed in 6 minutes. Basically, if you're going to buy this new MacBook Air, you're going to be switching from an older device. And just like me, 30 gigs file transfer in just about a minute would actually surprise you, and it's actually an impressive thing, I would say. Not a bad thing at all. Sure, it's unfair that the higher storage versions can actually do it faster and like way faster than this one. But in day-to-day usage, you won't be comparing this. You might not actually notice all this slow speeds in the SSD. And let me give you a reference as well. So I used to edit my 4K videos for my YouTube channel using my iPad Air 4. And the read-write speeds that it does not have an SSD, just an internal memory, which has read-write speeds of about 500 MB only. And in that also, I have never faced any lags or anything while editing 4K 30 FPS videos. And the same thing goes for my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, the smartphone device that I previously used to use for editing my 4K videos. That also has way less read-write speeds, like about 300 to 400 MB per second. It's not even in gigabytes. And that also I was able to smoothly edit 4K videos without any lags whatsoever, and even the rendering times were respectable. Sure, it was not blazing fast or anything, and of course, I was not using several heavy effects or anything, but still, for semi-pro usage, just for having 4K layers with multiple 4K layers actually, that was also really fine on that less read-write speed. Even heavy gaming like Genshin Impact, that also did heat up my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra and even my iPad Air 4 to some extent, but those games were actually playable. Genshin Impact was also, I went ahead a lot in the game without any lags whatsoever. Yes, there were some frame drops in between, and the device, both my devices, the iPad Air 4 and the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, actually heated up also. But I was able to, have a smooth gameplay, and I did not complain at all actually. So honestly, if you see, this slow SSD speed situation will actually not affect you in day-to-day usage, at least not that much. Yes, there is one situation where this SSD speed might actually affect you is the swap. So if you are using a less RAM, less unified memory MacBook Air with the 8 gigs especially, then yes, that 8 gigs is bound to fill up very quickly, and it will use your SSD storage to improve the performance basically. And in that case, having the slower SSD speed may affect you a little bit and may give you some beach balls also. But that the bar or the threshold where this happens is very high, I would say. If you're doing very pro work, where you're to the extent that you're even bothered with this slow SSD speed, I think then your usage is a pro usage. In that case, you should not go for an Air device. That's not to say that the Air device can only do light stuff, it can also do seriously heavy stuff as well. It is just that in that case, time will not matter to you because you're not a pro user basically. And if you're a pro user and if actually you have deadlines to deliver tasks like heavy tasks, then you should definitely look at the pros and definitely also worry about this slow SSD speed. But for most users, for I think about 90% users who are even semi-pros, they won't really bother this SSD speed situation. And if you are actually having the semi-pro usage, then in that case, I would actually recommend you to go to the 512 gigabytes version minimum. And that's not with the read-write speeds situation. It's basically about the storage situation because you should have internal memory at least of 512 gigs. Because let's face it, in 2022, having a laptop that has only 256 gigabytes of storage does not make sense actually, because even basic apps like Word and Excel, if you see in the App Store, are of about 1 to 2 gigabytes. And if you are even doing such productive tasks, your storage is bound to fill up very quickly just with these basic apps. So 256 gigabytes in terms of not the read-write speeds, in terms of the storage is actually very less for a laptop. Even smartphones are coming, if it was a smartphone, then it was okay. 256 gigabytes would have just cut it. But for laptop, I would just definitely suggest you to go for a higher version if you have a semi-pro usage. If you have very light usage, like just multimedia, web browsing, and sometimes you might edit a short video, like a YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, a short 4K video. For that also you don't have a deadline so per se. Then I think you should be fine with the base model with the 256 gigabytes lesser read-write storage as well. Now the next thing is about the thermal throttling. Now, this is actually a natural thing to happen. It happens in every device. So basically, when your processor actually is continuously having those sustained loads, it's continuously working to deliver high performance and continuously working on a really heavy task. So after some time, it will get heated up. So it needs some cooling situation, at least a cool environment or some heat sink that will actually dissipate that heat and actually make the device cooler so that it can sustain those continuous loads. So that is actually a natural phenomena. That is not an issue basically. That is bound to happen with any device. And the same happens with this new MacBook Air M2 as well. But in my day-to-day usage, I only noticed the laptop getting hot only when I was doing really heavy gaming tests. And that too running on an parallel desktop VM, especially a Windows VM hosted. I was trying to run Intel games. So in that case only, I actually noticed the laptop doing this thermal throttling, and yes, there were a lot of frame drops and lags there. But in day-to-day usage, even editing 4K videos, I even tried to edit an 8K video. And in that also I did not face any lags. Forget about the laptop even getting warm. So this level where it actually starts to throttle is very high for this laptop because of the capabilities of the M2 chip. It's seriously powerful, and especially if your use case, even semi-pro use case, is around 4K video editing and also image editing, image processing. I think you won't have that much issue, at least for most of the times. So to sum it up, this thermal throttling thing is legit, it's there, but it actually happens in a far case scenario which most people might not encounter unless they are actual pros. Now the next thing is about the price. And this is something that definitely we cannot ignore because Apple really bumped up the price this time by $200 or by 20,000 in India. And that's to say if the M1 MacBook Air is at discount, recently if you would have seen the M1 MacBook Air with 512 gigabytes of storage was actually at about 94,000 or so. That is closely about $900 or so. And in that price, if you're getting a M1 MacBook Air and the M2 MacBook Air with the 256 gigabytes of storage is actually at 1.2 lakhs or $1,200, that too with a slower SSD and all these controversies, then it can be a really confusing thing that if you should really go for this MacBook Air M2 or not. Most people would be inclined to just straight away go for the M1 MacBook Air as it's a safer thing. And even for reviewers, it's actually safer to recommend because let's face it, it's really difficult to recommend this device with all the confusion that is surrounding this, because it's a risky thing to recommend. Because on paper, if you see the slower SSD speeds, the thermal throttling, all these things do happen. Even though in day-to-day usage, most users might not face it, but on paper this happens. And that is why it is difficult for reviewers to actually recommend this device. And that is why it's safer to go with the older M1 Air or spend the extra if you are actually a pro user and go for the 14-inch MacBook Pro. However, the confusion increases because this device actually comes with a new latest design, with the notch with it, a new keyboard, the new colors, a new MagSafe port, new speakers, and even a new webcam, 1080p webcam, which, let's face it, I think we can ignore that upgrade because it does not actually give that much of a better quality than the previous one. But all these things actually make it compelling and at the same time confusing. So that is why this price can also be a confusing factor, because you're spending extra. You're getting certainly features like the design stuff, but on the performance side, you're definitely on paper seeing a downgrade. Let me tell you just straight away that I've been using this device for quite a while now. And I've also done my full review. I've edited a couple of videos on these 4K videos. Especially my full review was actually about 30 minutes long, and it's in total 25 gigs. And I actually did not face any beach balls whatsoever. Yes, I have spec'd this up because of my usage. So I will be consistently using this for my video editing, and especially my YouTube channel is not a pro level channel. I'm still starting up with my YouTube channel, and my videos do not have lot many effects, and certainly I don't have any deadlines. I'm just doing this as a hobby. So in my use case, I do have a semi-pro like usage where I'm not faced with clients or deadlines or anything, but I'm just doing this as a hobby. But certainly I do require a lot of power. And in this use case, actually, this new MacBook Air M2 is more than enough for me. And just to have more reliability, I've just spec'd this up to 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of SSD. But it's not to surround with all the controversies that are there. Now, firstly, about the RAM, I think we should spec this up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, because 8 gigabytes of RAM in as per 2022 standards, and especially even if you're doing light tasks, if you're opening a lot of Chrome tabs, Safari tabs, and if you're doing Teams, if you have Teams open, if you're doing Zoom calls, I think 8 gigabytes of RAM, especially with the RAM management that Mac OS does, I think it's still very low. So you should really spec this up. And in my use case, where I do have semi-pro like usage, where I'll be testing out a lot of apps and I'll be stressing this laptop a lot. I'll also be editing a lot of videos on this, trying a lot of new games, especially on Intel-based games. So in the such cases, I do require more RAM, because I do require that more reliability, and I do require that more window where it actually starts to thermal throttle. And when it comes to the storage, I've spec'd it up to 512 gigabytes, because as I mentioned previously, 256 gigabytes, the internal storage is very less for me. Sure, you can always buy an external SSD and plug it in, but I do find that having an extra accessory to carry around, I do not feel that much comfortable with that. Especially if many people also try to host apps for video editing, host even games also on the external SSD, which I don't find it much reliable, because it's still an external SSD. It's not an internal one which can be easily interacted with by the OS. So I would really prefer that have more internal storage, because you can then host a lot of apps, host a lot of stuff internally that will actually have faster read writes, even with the slower SSD speeds on the base model. So actually having more storage is actually beneficial, especially with nowadays how the OS is designed. It actually uses up the SSD also for the performance. So having more storage actually helps. So if you actually bump this up, then the price certainly increases to about 1.6 or 1.7 lakhs, about 15 to $1,700. And then this closely gets into the territory of the 14-inch MacBook Pro. So then again, this causes confusion, because you're already spending so much. So then should you spend a little more extra and go for the Pro to have more reliability? Well, let me tell you one thing. If you see a lot of reviews, as I have seen on YouTube, many people have actually compared the M1 MacBook Pro with this M2 MacBook Air as well. in certain scenarios like coding, video editing, even gaming. And the results were a hit or miss. And that was a big surprise because definitely on paper, the M1 Pro MacBook Pro should outperform this M2 MacBook Air. But in some scenarios, like it was a hit or miss. Sometimes the M2 MacBook Air was actually catching up or even performing faster than the Pro MacBook Pro. That is why I think it is better to have clarity about your use case. So if your use case involves clients or if your use case involves heavy pro usage, then definitely that pro will help you because it has fans in it. It will give you an extended performance. If you're especially planning to use that laptop for several years, and it will give you extended performance. It will not thermal throttle at all because it has several fans in it. It also has more capabilities when it comes to handling heavy tasks. It has more GPU cores in it. The MacBook Air is stuck at 10 GPU cores, whereas the 14-inch MacBook Pro will have more GPU cores. So for graphic intensive tasks, it will definitely help. So in that case, you will have more hardware capabilities, but it's not that any device is perfect. So having clarity on your use case is more important. So if you're a semi-pro just like me, and if you're just starting out a YouTube channel, if you just want to experiment and learn more new video editing softwares or try out other softwares and just for learning purposes or just for your college work, and you definitely don't mind if you like even put extensive loads on this laptop and it spend some more time in giving you that output, you definitely don't mind. So in that cases, this M2 MacBook Air is just perfect. It's more than perfect, I would say. So do not let the drama and the confusion actually confuse you with your purchase decision. Let's keep it simple. Let's not make it complicated with all the controversies surrounding it. And just based on your use case and based on what you like, if you like the new MacBook Air M2's design, if you have semi-pro like usage, then definitely go for the M2 MacBook Air. It's an incredible device. And there's also one more factor that I want to mention, especially this actually applies to me as well. So if you're spending so much, like about $1,000 on a device, you would definitely want a new device that is like latest and greatest from Apple, basically. For some people, if you're actually spending that much now in 2022 on an M1 MacBook Air, which is actually 2 years old, then you might not be that much satisfied because it's still an older device. It's still not as powerful as the M2 chip. It has an older design, which is pretty outdated, I would say. And this factor actually matters to a lot of people. But if you're a person and if it does not matter to you, and if you just want to play safe and just want a laptop for everyday usage, not much expectations from it, then definitely the M1 MacBook Air also is a great choice. But if you're a person who's in the market now to buy a new MacBook Air device and wants to actually, make your spending worthwhile, then definitely this MacBook Air M2 will not disappoint you. So guys, this was just an unscripted ramble about the controversies surrounding this device because I just wanted to make it clear that you can just seriously ignore all that negativity on tech YouTube about this device and just look at this device as it is, as it performs in day-to-day usage. And if you have more questions, you can always ask me in the comment section below. And you can also refer to my full review in which I have actually covered all the aspects about this device. If you are new, please subscribe to this channel. If you are already subscribed, thanks for supporting my work. So that's it in this video, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.